Welcome to OOTO, the Out of the Office Investigation. Today, we're going to a place where mountains aren't just rock and ice, but are actually seen as living, breathing beings. We're building things on a massive, monumental scale isn't just construction, it's a form of conversation, maybe even a form of prayer.
Yeah, take a really close look at this. When you see this incredible stonework, what's your gut reaction? A fortress, right? Some kind of impenetrable barrier? Well, what if I told you it might also be a prayer that's been etched into stone? Today, we're heading up into the high Andes to investigate these monumental structures that just completely defy our modern categories. You see, these aren't just ruins, they're a kind of physical language, a dialogue with a world that was perceived not as a pile of resources to be exploited, but as a single, conscious, living entity.
Exactly, Sam. We're going to explore how, for the Andean peoples, a massive stone wall could be both an astonishing feat of engineering and a physical conversation with the entire cosmos. For them, building wasn't about conquering nature or trying to tame a wild landscape, not at all. It was about finding their place within it, about achieving this state of profound harmony. It's a complete reversal of the way we tend to think about progress and development.
So to really get what they built, we have to start by completely resetting our own perspective. We have to try and see the world through their eyes. And this means stepping away from our view of the world as just an inert thing to be used, and really embracing their idea of it as a living entity, a being that you have to have a relationship with. This worldview, their cosmovision, is the essential blueprint, the very foundation for every single terrace, aqueduct, and temple that came after. And right at the absolute heart of this worldview is the concept of Pacha. Now, this Quechua word is incredibly difficult to translate because it means so much. It's not just the world or the earth. It's this profound idea that time and space are a single, unified thing. I mean, just imagine that for a second. For them, the universe wasn't some straight line stretching from a distant past to a far-off future. It was more like a vast, ever-present landscape that you could navigate, where your ancestors and the people yet to be born all coexisted with the living. This one concept really shapes everything else.
And this landscape of Pacha was, well, it was layered. These three realms you see here weren't separate, faraway places like our idea of heaven and hell. They were simultaneous realities, all existing at once, all intermingling. So you have the Hanan Pacha, the upper world, the realm of the sun god Inti, the moon, the stars, all the celestial forces. That was represented by the condor, the magnificent bird that flies closest to the heavens. Then there's the K Pacha, this world, our world, where humans and animals and plants live. That's symbolized by the puma, which represents power and intelligence and life on Earth. And finally, you have the Uku Pacha, the inner world. But it wasn't a scary place. It was the sacred realm of the ancestors, of seeds just waiting to germinate, the source from which all new life springs. And it was represented by the snake, a creature deeply connected to the Earth's wisdom.
That's a perfect way to put it, Sam. And this consciousness wasn't just some abstract idea. It was physically present in the landscape itself. The very ground they walked on, Pachamama, wasn't just dirt. She was a nurturing, divine mother, the ultimate source of all life. And those towering, snow-capped mountains that surrounded them, the Apus, they were seen as powerful, watchful protectors. These weren't just geological formations. They were guardian spirits that controlled the weather, that held the glaciers that provided life-giving water, and watched over the communities living in their shadows. I mean, to this day, people in the Andes still make offerings to the local Apus. Even a single strange rock, a spring, or a cave could be a huaca, a focus point of sacred energy. The whole world was alive, and it was speaking.
And the thing that held this entire vibrant system together, that governed every single interaction, was this incredibly powerful social and psychological principle, Aini, or sacred reciprocity. This, right here, this is the crucial piece of the puzzle. It's the engine behind everything we're about to see. Aini is the profound belief that the universe operates on a constant, balanced exchange. Nothing is a one-way street. If you take from Pachamama, say you harvest potatoes, you have to give back an offering. If your neighbor helps you build your house, you don't pay them with money. You owe them your labor in return. It's the law of the cosmos and the law of the community, and you just can't separate them. It's a worldview built not on getting more, but on keeping balance.
Okay, so let's really think about what that means in practice. If the world is alive and you are bound by this cosmic law to live in reciprocity with it, what do you do when you face a huge challenge? Like, how do you farm on the side of a steep, rocky mountain? Well, you don't just clear-cut it and impose your will with brute force. That would be a huge violation of Aini. Instead, you enter into a dialogue with the mountain. You apply this principle of reciprocity to the very soil, and you design a system that works with the landscape, not against it.
And make no mistake, the Andean environment is one of the toughest places on Earth to grow food. We're talking about near-vertical slopes, incredibly thin topsoil, crazy temperature swings that can go from scorching sun to freezing solid in a single day, and then these torrential seasonal rains that can wash an entire hillside away in minutes. In that kind of world, our modern idea of individualism isn't just a bad idea, it's a fatal one. Survival absolutely demanded immense, coordinated community effort, generations of passed-down knowledge, and a deep, deep respect for the powerful forces of nature.
So their brilliant solution was the andenes, the agricultural terraces that we see etched into just about every mountain in the region. Now, these are not simple dirt ledges. They are incredibly sophisticated, multi-layered engineering systems. First, the foundation is a retaining wall of huge stones, carefully fitted and angled backwards into the slope, which makes them amazingly resistant to earthquakes. Then, behind that wall, they place a layer of coarse gravel and broken stones for drainage, which is crucial to keep heavy rains from waterlogging the soil. And finally, on top of all that, a layer of sand, and then the precious, rich topsoil, which often had to be painstakingly carried in baskets, sometimes for miles, all the way up from the fertile river valleys below.
And this is where the practical and the sacred just merge so beautifully. The terrace wasn't just a farm. It was a prayer made physical. It was a profound act of Aini on a massive scale. By building it, the community was giving its collective labor, its ingenuity, its sweat, back to the earth. They were, in a very real way, clothing the sacred mountain in fertile fields, treating it with respect and care, so that Pachamama, in return, would provide for them. It was a way to literally stitch their society into the living body of the mountain gods.
And this system just brilliantly shows their mastery of creating and manipulating microclimates. The stone walls of the terraces would soak up the sun's intense heat all day, and then slowly radiated back out during the cold nights. This simple, elegant technology could raise the soil temperature by several degrees, just enough to protect sensitive crops from the severe frosts you get at high altitudes. At places like Moreh, with its stunning, almost otherworldly circular terraces, they perfected this. The temperature difference between the highest and lowest terrace could be as much as 15 degrees Celsius. This wasn't just farming, it was a massive agricultural laboratory, an early and incredibly sophisticated form of bioengineering. It let them experiment and figure out which of their thousands of potato varieties grew best at very specific simulated altitudes.
And this exact same philosophy, this fusion of the practical and the sacred, applied to water. The aqueducts and irrigation channels, which could stretch for miles with pinpoint precision, they weren't just plumbing. No, they were understood to be the sacred veins of the landscape. They carefully channeled and distributed the life-giving blood of the Apus, that pure, melted glacial water, down to the fields and the communities below. So to engineer the flow of water was to actively participate in the circulation of lifeblood through the body of the earth itself.
You're listening to OOO, with research by El Campesino. Now that we've seen how they cultivated the mountains, let's talk about the very stones they used to build their world.
All right, let's move to their monumental stonework, because this is where the Andean worldview manifests in what is maybe its most mind-boggling way. We're talking about structures like Sacsayhuaman, near Cusco, which are built with individual stones weighing up to 200 tons. Now, to put that in perspective, that's like stacking 30 large elephants on top of each other. And they quarried, moved, and fitted these stones with this level of precision, all without using the wheel, large draft animals, or iron tools. The sheer scale is almost impossible to comprehend.
And they did all of this in one of the most seismically active regions on the planet. Their solution was to develop a totally unique style of mortarless masonry, known as ashlar. Just look at the difference. Instead of using smaller, uniform bricks held together by mortar, which is always a weak point, they chose to work with these massive, irregular, many-sided stones. They then shaped and fitted these enormous blocks together so perfectly that even after centuries of earthquakes, you still can't slide a piece of paper or a knife blade between them. It's a level of precision that is baffling even to modern engineers. The practical result of this incredible work is a wall that can pretty much withstand any powerful earthquake. Local folklore actually captures the physics of it perfectly, this idea that the stones dance during a tremor. The complex, interlocking, mortarless design allows the entire structure to move, to absorb that seismic energy, and then to just settle back perfectly into place once the shaking stops. It's an ingenious anti-seismic technology, but as with everything else we're seeing, the belief behind it is even more fascinating than the result. So the crucial point here is that they saw stone not as dead, inert material, but as a living thing with its own agency. There's an Inca origin myth that says their people were first crafted from stone by their creator god. So for them, a master stonemason wasn't just a laborer cutting rock. He was a kind of priest, almost a shaman who was communicating with the stone, listening to it, and helping it fulfill its own nature, its own desire to fit perfectly with its neighbors. The finished wall wasn't just a structure, it was a powerful physical symbol of a perfectly ordered society, where every individual part fits together to create a stable, resilient, harmonious whole.
This understanding just elevates these structures from being mere fortresses or temples into something we don't really have a modern word for. They became living, sacred entities, or huacas. They weren't just buildings sitting on the landscape, they were active, breathing parts of the landscape. A great temple like the Coricancha in Cusco was seen as a conduit, a cosmic anchor. It was believed to draw in the sacred energy from the surrounding Mount Napuz and physically anchor the Hanampacha, the world of the gods, to the soil of our world, the K Pacha. It was all about maintaining cosmic balance.
Which brings us back to that fundamental question, how? I mean, how on earth did they do this? How did they quarry, transport, and perfectly fit a 200-ton stone into a wall high up on a mountain? The answer isn't some lost technology or ancient aliens. No, it's something far more powerful. Social organization, rooted once again in that core principle of Aini, of reciprocity on an imperial scale.
That system was called the mita, and it's a huge mistake to see it simply as a labor tax, or, as some of the early Spanish chroniclers did, a form of slavery. It was a massive, state-organized expression of reciprocity. Every able-bodied head of a household, in exchange for the land and security that the state provided, owed the empire a certain amount of their labor each year. This was the engine that built their incredible 25,000-mile road network, their aqueducts, their temples, and their mountain-spanning terraces.
And the state had its own reciprocal duty to fulfill, its own Aini. While you were working on a Mita project, the Inca state was obligated to provide you with food, with tools, housing, and even chicha, a ceremonial corn beer that was central to social life. It wasn't just drudgery, it was often a festive, social event. Working on a great temple wasn't just construction, it was a ritual of unification. It brought together different communities, or islas, from all across the vast empire, letting them participate in a sacred project that reinforced their shared identity and their connection to the emperor and the gods. It was Aini on a national scale, the very glue of the empire.
So let's circle back to our original question, Alex. After all of this, when we look at these incredible sites, like Sacsayhuaman or Machu Picchu, what are we really seeing? Is it a fortress? Is it a temple? Is it a farm? An astronomical observatory? You know, we try to put these labels on them, but they never seem to quite fit. The answer, of course, is that they are all of those things at once, and so much more. Our modern categories just fall apart here because they come from a worldview that separates the sacred from the secular, the practical from the spiritual. These places are a total synthesis. Their terraces were agricultural tools that fed millions. Their carved stones were sophisticated celestial observatories used to track solstices and pinpoint the right time for planting. They were, without a doubt, sacred temples for ritual, and they were the physical embodiment of the social contract of Aini and the Mita. They were everything, all at once. Ultimately, when we look at these stones, we are looking at a worldview that has been made real. A worldview where engineering is a form of prayer, where technology is inseparable from spirituality, and where the survival and prosperity of a whole society depend not on domination, but on maintaining a relationship of balance and respect with a living world. And in our current era, an era facing huge ecological challenges born from a very different worldview, the legacy of the Andes isn't just in its beautiful ruins. It's in its profound, ancient, and maybe incredibly timely idea of living in a reciprocal dialogue with the world. It leaves us with that final, powerful question to consider in our own lives. What really changes when we stop seeing the world as a resource to be managed and start seeing it as a relationship to be maintained?
A relationship that demands our own form of Aini. It's something to think about.